One of the things I love so much is the autonomy that it brings. I love having control over my day, having control over how my day is going to unfold.
Yeah.
And I feel like it brings a level of tranquility
Yes.
because it allows me to be present because I have been so purposeful
Right.
about how my day is going to look.
Yeah. It gives you more control.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Project She Leads. My name is Nori Joaquin, your host. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you will consider subscribing. Back in 2020, the work environment changed forever due to COVID, and so many of you are now starting to work remotely or work a hybrid schedule. And so we're going to tackle leading remotely on today's episode. This is going to be part 1. And to help me tackle this topic is my guest, Sharnell Weathersby. Welcome, Sharnell.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here, and I love this topic for all the reasons that you mentioned, and also because it's continuing to evolve.
Yes. I'm so glad to have you here. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nori, first of all, we go to church together at Calvary. But outside of just being a woman that loves the Lord, I'm a mother. I'm also a wife. We're going to be celebrating 17 years of marriage. Yes. And I also professionally, I've always been in the branding and marketing space and spent many years in corporate America. And the last 2 years, I've transitioned with COVID in so many ways to being at home. So now I am self-employed, which I absolutely love. And I do speaking and coaching. And really what that is executive coaching, but it's also an opportunity to develop individuals through leadership and then also in their strategic plans for their businesses, especially entrepreneurs. So this has really allowed me to be really a stay-at-home mom, but really a working mom at home because my kids are still relatively young.
So that is super awesome. So back in 2020, beginning of 2020, I was going into the office every day, Monday through Friday. And now, like so many others, I now work remotely.
Yeah.
And I had to adjust to being a remote leader.
Yeah.
But when you and I were talking before, you have a perspective on remote work and how it extends beyond just working from home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you share a little bit more about that?
You know, and so many of us can relate to the dynamics of working remotely because it's every bit of leveraging platforms like Zoom for video calls, for meetings, but also working remotely has a lot to do with running a team that is not necessarily with you face to face. For many years, I worked in a corporate environment, in an office environment, just like yourself, Nori. And while we worked with individuals face to face, I had to also work with and collaborate with teams that were not necessarily in the same office as me. And maybe you can relate, right? It's working with individuals overseas internationally, working with individuals that work on different time zones, on different coasts. And in many ways, that all falls into the same realm of working remotely because you have to be able to leverage technology and different platforms to communicate, to collaborate, and get work done. And then I also beg to say that being at home, you know, outside of just professionally, but personally, having to really be able to work with individuals that you don't see every day, family members, things like that, and being able to communicate and reach out to them and leverage technology, whether it's FaceTiming or texting, things like that, are all fall into this realm of being able to really work with and lead individuals outside of just day-to-day face-to-face interaction.
That's so true. I love that. So there are a lot of great things about working remote. I personally love it so much. I don't think I will ever want to go back to going into the office Monday through Friday.
Right.
Like, I'm done with that lifestyle. I'm over it.
I know,
One of the things I love so much is the autonomy that it brings. I love having control over my day, having control over how my day is going to unfold.
Yeah.
And I feel like it brings a level of tranquility
Yes.
because it allows me to be present
Mm-hmm.
because I have been so purposeful
Right.
about how my day is going to look.
Yeah, it gives you more control,
Mhm.
you know. And we hear the joke now that, you know, for many years, many of us were like, if I only had more time, you know, if I
Yes.
could only. And now we've been blessed in many ways, right, with the changes that our world and economy and our companies are going through. While there have been catastrophic and traumatic events, there's also been a blessing under the tide of
Yes.
giving us time back, and or even just allowing us to value time in a different way. And so really not just learning, but leading
Mhm.
has really allowed us to have more control over how we manage our schedules. And that has been a huge benefit for me as
Absolutely.
well. I think about, you know, I used to spend so much money on before and after care, right, for
Mhm.
my kids.
Yeah.
And now it's really just simple things like that, like the fact that you know, working remotely has allowed me to be able to provide, you know, before and after care on my own with my husband. And just simple things like that has really changed the dynamics, yes, of our schedule, but even the dynamics of our lifestyle,
Yeah.
you know. And so I can just imagine for yourself, you know, what have been some of the things that you've had the opportunity to enjoy now that
Yeah.
you are working remotely?
So I think that's so huge
Mhm.
because it does provide, you know, flexibility.
Yes.
And I'm going to say work-life balance.
Yeah.
And as you and I talked to before,
Yeah.
not everyone agrees with the word balance.
Yeah.
But I think it's because when people think of balance, they think of equal scales.
Yeah.
You know, like this equals balance.
Yeah.
But sometimes for some, balance can be this.
Yes.
Balance can be that.
Yeah.
And so balance can look different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it enables you to be consistent
Yeah.
with the things that are important to you,
Exactly.
that can be balanced. And so I feel like I have that balance because I can be more consistent with
Right.
working out.
Yep.
I can schedule things, you know, spending time going to lunch with someone,
Mhm.
other things like that, because I'm still able to control my day. So I
Yeah.
know that I'm still going to be able to accomplish the task that
Right.
is expected of me. But then I also have that flexibility that I can do some other things if I need to.
It gives you more options.
Yes.
You know, you have more options to do things that usually you'd push off to maybe the weekend or the latter part of your day. You're able to integrate those. That's my favorite word, right? It's not balance, but for me, it's integrate. Like I'm able to integrate things into the upper part of my day that I was not able to, that I usually would stay for the evening or the weekends or not at all, right? And so remote has just really allowed for I feel like the different pillars of life, my personal life, professional life, like the ability to really integrate the different things. So really, I feel more whole.
Yes.
Like we're able to live
That's great.
life as just, this is life. And sometimes it's on with work and sometimes it's on with taking care of kids and family or just myself, you know, being able to pull appointments forward a little bit more so they're not all pushed to a certain time of day or time of the year.
Yes.
So in that way, it's been fulfilling in many ways, but I know we're going to talk later about the challenges
Yes.
and the self-discipline that are required. But yeah, that idea of having more control and flexibility has really been fulfilling.
Yeah, I can totally see that. One of the maybe stranger things about working remote that I love so much is that it allows me to have reactions to things as my day unfolds. I work in finance and sometimes we have some very stressful meetings.
Yeah.
And so it allows me, if I'm not on camera, to have a reaction. I can make a face, I can put myself on mute and I can speak out loud if I need to.
Right.
If I read an email that's upsetting or frustrating, you know, I have that time to have that reaction.
Yeah.
And that's really huge because before I worked in a place where I had a cubicle and the cubicles had short walls and our team all worked with around each other, and we were near a really busy area of the office near the kitchen. And so there was always a lot of traffic. And I remember so many times, I'm like zoned in, focused, and somebody would walk by and, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And it's because I'm making some type of weird face or weird expression because I'm working. And so now that has been completely eliminated.
Right.
So for me, I need that. And I love that so much.
Yeah, you can just relax a little bit. I mean, there's so many emotional dynamics that go through the day, as you've mentioned, and just it just seems like you can have more of that flow, to be yourself and to recoup, whether it's before or after, or even to prepare.
Yes.
Like sometimes some of us work differently. We need the opportunity to prepare, to get ready for something, and there's, whether you're at home working or you're at the library working, wherever you find yourself working remotely, you have the ability to prepare yourself and to get yourself into the zone to where you need to be on, and then you can turn it off versus having to be on for 8-9 hours, and you can turn it off and on, which allows you to be more present, and to really be more engaged, I think, when it's time to be engaged, because you've had that opportunity to prepare yourself.
Right. One of the other things that I love too is it's a little bit cheaper, at least for me anyway.
Yeah.
I don't have to go out and buy all of these work clothes. I'm not spending money on gas, which right now is such a great blessing.
Yes,
tolls, I'm not spending money on tolls. And for me overall, it's cheaper. I mean, even though when you work remotely, you might be spending a little bit more for Wi-Fi.
Right.
There's a trade-off, but overall, I feel like it's provided me a lot of savings, which is also great.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many different dynamics too. I mean, we're probably spending more money on, like you said, trade-offs on things that we're spending more time doing now, if you will. But overall, it's been a cost savings for many households, I can only imagine. And the use of technology, there's been a learning curve, right? For so many of us, there's been a learning curve of, how do I leverage the technology? How do I better express myself on a camera and better communicate on a camera? But the learning curve has been good because, in today's society, we've got to be able to communicate in different ways to get the message across. And remote learning has really given us an opportunity to be more authentic and stretched all of us outside of our comfort zones in a way where it's, they say, when you're building a team, right, the best thing to do is push people outside of their comfort zones.
Right.
And I do feel like as a leader that the individuals that I interact with, whether there's clients that I work with that are remote or customers or colleagues that I'm working with, we've all been stretched outside of our comfort zone in a way that has been, yes, uncomfortable, but it's also been so refreshing too, because we're all in a space that's unfamiliar. We're in a time that's unfamiliar, but we have a common goal.
Right.
So if you know what your values are and you know what your goal is, I think there's just such a great opportunity in front of us now to say, I'm going to lead authentically, and I'm going to lead authentically whether in person or in a remote atmosphere.
Right. So you brought up communication. And I think that as great as working remote is, it doesn't come without its challenges.
Yes.
And I think communication is right at the very top, because since we are working remotely, there's an increase in communication.
Yeah.
And I know I have experienced receiving more emails, more meetings, more text messages, more phone calls. And with that increase in communication, it also provides more opportunity to misread someone or be misunderstood or to take offense to something because you've misunderstood someone else's tone in an email or in a text message. And it can affect your working relationships in a negative way.
Correct.
So with your experience, what are some challenges that you've seen in communicating with your clients?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, I've had to realize that there is a need for more communication. And as simple as that sounds, we can't be in denial about that. Like, we have to really wrap our head around and understand that we can't just rely on a Zoom meeting to be the only way that that form of interaction or engagement is going to exist, and that you've got to use all the tools in your kit. So I have put systems really in place that have allowed me to interact with colleagues. I have a colleague that I've interacted with that lives in Australia.
Mhm.
And so not only is there remote is the only option for us in
Yes.
so many ways, we have different time zones, completely different time zones. And then we have cultural barriers. So there's so many things so many dynamics that are happening in order for us to work effectively together. And so what I really have leaned into in all of my different engagements is over communicating, like literally in my mind saying, Sharnell, over communicate, repeat, write it, say it, do every form,
Right.
because then it's got to penetrate through, and then by over communicating, whether it's saying it over email, and then repeating it when you have the opportunity on a video call, and then even just repeating it again, following up on email and repeating it again. But by doing that over and over, you're getting the message across, but you're also, as you mentioned, providing an opportunity for consistency, which then grabs somebody's attention, because we're all being flooded with so many forms of communication, and more communication, that you've got to be able to penetrate that. And then you've also got to be creative to really pull forward what's most important. So over communicating has been a big thing. Like over, just saying things over and over again has been so important. But also then being very clear about what's important. What do we really need to be talking about? And leveraging remote video, if you will, like a Zoom, for what really needs to be communicated to really foster engagement. And then leveraging communications like email or instant messaging and things like that for other forms of communicating. But knowing how to use your tools is so important to get the message across.
Yeah, it really is. I have found that because everyone is getting so many more emails, that there's a tendency a lot of times to just ignore things.
Yes.
So as much as you try to be consistent or clear, all those things, sometimes they still just, fall to the side of the road because they're not even being read.
Right.
And so I have found that to be a really big challenge, with communicating is those emails, is making sure that I am clear so someone doesn't misunderstand and maybe take offense.
Yeah.
But then I also want them to read my
Right,
email.
right, exactly. And I go back to, as like Leadership 101 is this aspect of getting to know people. Everybody has a different personality. Everybody has a different style. And this is even more important in today's environment, that we've got to know the styles of the type of the people we're working with, right? And know what's going on in their lives. Like, we have to really be intentional about knowing and wanting to know the people that we're leading. And I go back to this idea that I have had to foster in more time into my schedule, right? To really be able to say, it's going to take more time for me to lead this individual or to interact with this individual. So therefore, I'm going to build it into my schedule, right? It's going to be before the meeting, there's going to be this, there's after this, there's emails, there's all these interactions. But a big part of that is just knowing the style and knowing what that individual is bringing to the table. Are they in a leadership role themselves and they're super busy? Are they a woman that wears many hats, just like yourself, and all the distractions going on in her life? Are they dealing with hardship? Are they dealing with just really taking the moment to realize that we're not all gadgets and we've all got things going on? And because we're remote, they might have a child in the background, or they may have, something a sick loved one. So being sensitive to knowing what's going on, because that allows you to switch to and say, okay, I'm not going to send a long email because it's probably not going to get across to this person at all. But then, okay, what is the best way to communicate? And then what is the best thing to say at the end of the day? Like, do we need to regurgitate everything, or are there just key points that you want to get across? And the other thing, Nori, is really what is it that we want from somebody else when we're communicating?
Right.
Because there's one thing to just blast them with all this information, but I think in today's society, because time is of the essence, that if you can just say what you need from them and make it easier, just tell them what you need, so they don't have to sift through everything. I think that's also a very powerful way to lead, and a way that I think those that are following you will really appreciate.
Right. So I'm sure that you probably, like me, have a lot of meetings.
Yes.
And some are on camera, some are not on camera. But one of the other things I've noticed that is a big challenge when it comes to meetings is when, people are sharing their screen.
Yes.
Now with finance, there are meetings where we do have to share screens because you're going over financial results and things like that. But I have found that sometimes people have a very difficult time, following along when I can't see that. Can you make it bigger? Can you make it bigger? Can you make it bigger? And then you have a little bit of information and then you're trying to scroll. And so it just tends to be an issue sometimes, or just even people paying attention. Because they don't see you, you don't see them, they don't see you. And so you've got this meeting going on while all along you're on your other laptop, doing something else.
There's a lady that I love dearly that I work with. And every time we have a meeting, there's like 10 of us in this meeting. Every time, I promise you, she's doing her nails. Like she's like talking and I'm like, I can know you're doing your nails. And it's so funny because she's just kind of doing her thing. But it's true. It's like everybody's multitasking in some way, whether you're looking at your 2 to 3 screens. So it is like, how do you get people to stay engaged? And how do you, one thing that I think I mentioned this to you that I love to do is I just call people by their name. I know that's uncomfortable. Like, oh, she called me out. But like, that is the way I really keep, whether it's even just 3 of us on a Zoom call, talking to people by name, when you're having a conversation, keeps them engaged and keeps them, focused. And it's not so much that because they're multitasking all the time, but sometimes it's just like valuing their presence. You don't know how many Zoom calls they've been on and how long they've been stuck in their house, or what they're dealing with in their home, because there's so many distractions. But by just valuing people's presence, an individual's presence, is so powerful. And trying to make eye contact, but calling somebody by their name, there is so much power in just saying somebody's name.
That's huge.
That is huge, to affirm them, to just let them know that you appreciate their presence, that they are valued in a tough conversation, or whether it's a casual, personal conversation. But that idea of just calling people by their name and talking to them by name, especially when you've never met them in person. There are so many people I've worked with that I've never met in person. And we have such a strong relationship because I think we're more authentic, but by just leveraging little tools or tricks of letting them know that they're valued deepens your relationship and causes them hopefully to be more engaged.
That's really awesome. So I know a lot of people during this transition into working remotely, a lot of people had a difficult time with just the distractions, at being at home, and especially if they had small children, you're trying to take care of them, or you're working and, that dirty kitchen is screaming at you, that pile of dirty laundry is yelling your name. And it's very hard to create these kind of boundaries where you feel like you can just concentrate on work and ignore all of the things that are going on at home. It's really challenging.
It is challenging. One of the things that I work with my clients is this idea of values and boundaries. And first and foremost, know what your values are. I think that professionally, personally, know what you value. So there's values, but what are the things that you value in life? And it may be your faith, it may be the relationships that you have, it may be your health, your wellness, what your time, what have you. But know what that is, because that's going to be your baseline in everything that you do. Because we have only so much time. So when we say, okay, I want to better manage my time, Sharnell, how do I better manage my time? I go back to, well, what do you value? Because that's going to help you sift through and make priorities. So when we have this conversation about, I need boundaries, I need to put parameters in place so that I can be more productive, it goes back to, okay, what do you value? Because then that's going to help you set up where your boundaries need to be. And in these remote environments, we can find ourselves extremely burnt out because we have no boundaries, where we're pulling out our computer at 6:30 dinner time because it's easy to do. And the office is right there. Or, I'm working at 8 o'clock because it's so easy to just go ahead and do that. Or I'm spending all this time with my kids or all this time with my loved ones, and I'm neglecting the time that I need to spend here. Right. So by setting boundaries in place that really align to what are your values and what are really priorities, really helps you to, like you said, have that balance or the integration that we're looking for.
Right. I love that. I know a lot of people also had a really difficult time with isolation.
Yes.
Even people who are just naturally introverted even struggled because they missed that kind of human, connection and interaction. Yeah. And I think of the people who are single, who maybe didn't have other family members at home. Yes. And during the lockdown, they had nobody. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And that was really a lot of our young people, our young adults. And I think about there's several young women that I knew who were, new into their career. So, you may be new into your career and this was supposed to be the time where you're building your network, going to happy hour, all of this stuff and all these things happening. And you found yourself like in your home or you're in your apartment and you're working remotely now for the first 4 to 5 years of your career. And it is so different than what you thought it would be. But I think this is also a great opportunity for not only, yes, to get to know yourself and know what you want, but it's also an opportunity to be creative with how you network and how you manage yourself. Because you and I know that self-management is so important. Right. This idea of, how do I take care of myself from a wellness perspective, mentally and physically, but really putting systems and processes, if you will, in place that say, I'm going to honor my mental health and I'm going to get out and I'm going to take care of myself, whether it's exercising, going to have healthy conversations, healthy relationships, so that when you do get out and you do start to foster networking and all these things professionally, you are in such a better space, because so many of us didn't necessarily have those in place when we entered the professional world.
Exactly.
And we were kind of backtracking like, okay, I need a little bit more balance. I need to have more. So this is such a great time to really know the things that you want and know how am I going to prioritize so that I can be a healthy person before I start interacting with others.
Right. And I think it's difficult to escape feeling isolated.
Yes.
Because even if you have a house full of people, and even if you're an extroverted person, you're going to feel some level of isolation because you're separate from your team, you're separate from people that you work with. And so you have to be more strategic and purposeful about maintaining relationships, making relationships. And so it's not something that you can just let go and just think, I'm just here, I'm working, I'm getting my job done. But you have to start thinking of it completely different when you're working from home.
Intentional.
Correct.
I think it's just really being intentional and knowing that, back in the day, you can go out your house and walk down the street and kind of fall into social occasions like, oh, let's go hang out here. And now it has to be so much more planned, know, and there's limited numbers of places you can go, that you can go to, and the quantity and maximum, all those different factors come into play. But people are still interacting, and families are still getting together and everybody's still gathering. But it takes a level of intention. And I'm an introvert in so many different ways. But I was so looking for, like you said, the interaction with people in so many ways. And so it's healthy to know that we need to interact, and it's necessary.
Right, right. Well, everyone, this is the end of part 1. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you will like and leave a comment, and we will see you next week when we continue this conversation with part 2.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.